Welcome to Saturday versus Sunday. I'm Jeff Dover. With me is John Barban. Let's talk football.
Right. We're giving you our expert professional podcaster analysis of college
of championship
weekend. Yep. All right.
Well, hey, listen, when you start off with your bets going 4-0, that's a legit podcast right there.
I like how you just said started off and didn't talk about how it finished.
Well, we still with a winning record.
Winning record, yeah. There's a winning record this week. Yeah. Man, as some of those games were unfolding, I thought, why did we take the over or under in this game?
That's on my worst of list.
Oh, right.
Big 12 championship game.
Some of our bets.
What we were thinking for that, but that's fine.
All right, so shall I get started? So we're going to go best ever, worst ever. I have some coal to give out and some flowers.
Mm-hmm.
And there's actually a lot of flowers. Some people really showed up big this weekend.
Those are great games, man.
Yeah. All right, so shall I start?
Please.
All right, so number 3 best thing I saw was the Army offense doing Army offense stuff.
Yep.
So, okay, they had I specifically singled out. I mean, they were doing the long, slow, methodical drives, but they also had some quick strikes as well. So I just listed 3 drives that sort of epitomized what Army's offense can be when it's rocking, and that's what it was doing this week.
Mm-hmm.
First quarter, 11 plays, 72 yards, 6.5 minutes, and a touchdown. Third quarter, 11 plays again, 75 yards, 6.5 minutes, and a touchdown. It was the identical type of drive.
Yep.
Then in the fourth quarter, 16 plays, 84 yards, 10 minutes and 44 seconds, touchdown drive.
Yeah.
So that's 23 minutes off of the game in just 3 drives. And the other interesting thing is that's spread across the game. So they were doing this all game long. It's not like they got hot and cold, whereas many of these other teams we're going to talk about show up for half a game and then just disappear for half a game. These guys were just doing this all game long.
Yeah, 2 pass attempts, right? Like two passes the whole game.
Too many.
Yeah, Tulane knows it's coming.
Yeah,
and they can't stop it, and it's amazing. I'm really upset that we didn't bet on Army more this year, because there is nothing more comfortable than an Army lead and watch them on offense just grind it down. It's fantastic. And you could. I was worried because Cover 3, the Cover 3 podcast, they indicated that like maybe Army is more fake because they've played really bad teams for the most part, and Tulane might be legit, And so I was a little worried about that, but it did not look like that on the field. And even at the end, when, Tulane scored pretty easily, I guess I would say, like near the end, but it didn't matter because you don't get that many possessions with Army, which is why that thing works so well. So that was great to watch.
Yeah. And there's always this argument. I actually was thinking about this before we record that, but they can't beat the big teams. Look what happened when they played against Notre Dame. But that's kind of not the point. Army, to me, is one of the most fun teams to watch because they're a time capsule. They're a throwback to what football was before the forward pass. This is a 130-year-old program. Like it's 1890 or something. So it's been around a long time. You're getting a glimpse of history when you watch Army, also because it is Army, but also how they play. So everything about it, there's like a charm to it. I love it. And also, that's not an apples to apples comparison. Army has limitations on resources, limitations on how you can even get players into that program in the first place. You just can't get the same style of player.
No.
So you can't judge Army off of, they can't beat Notre Dame or they can't beat Georgia. Well, you actually shouldn't expect them to. Like, take them for what they're worth. I was thinking about this. Take all of the teams that don't have those same resources or have limitations. You have to take them for what they're worth. Georgia Tech has limitations. Stanford has limitations. There's different programs that still can be entertaining to watch. And I don't agree that it has to come down to, they can't win the national championship, so why watch them? Like whatever this is, an 11-12 win Army season is really, really satisfying to watch, given who they play in the AAC. They dominated that conference. And that's like, there's nothing wrong with it. Just that's the end of it. Then they have next week's game and whatever bowl game they go to. That's going to, for me, for watching them all year, that's just as satisfying as seeing whoever's going to win the national title. It's just as satisfying for me.
So their first ever conference championship, which is great. And you could tell because the coach at the end was like, this is big. We're happy. He's like, but he was already thinking about the Navy game, like, because that's really important to them. Right. So, no, like you said, it's that's a time capsule. It's a really good way of describing it. They don't have the same maybe dynamic playmakers or size on the offensive line because they have to serve in the military. You can't have a 6'8", 350-pound guy serve many positions in the military, and but when it's blocked well, and even if you're going against athletes, some Louisiana athletes, which are really good in Tulane, like that, it's a 5-yard run, it's a 5-yard run. So
nothing looks as good as the triple option when it's working.
Oh, it was great. That was fantastic. Watching that, having Army plus the 4, whatever we ended up having, and then with the lead, and then watching them just grind the ball away was one of the more satisfying things ever.
Oh, uniforms, outstanding.
Oh, yeah. And at Army, right? At Mitchie
everything
Stadium,
about it. That was just that might have been one of my top 5 games of the year. Because we bet on it, it worked out the way we wanted it to.
No, but and
Army just put in a complete dominant performance on both sides of the ball. And okay, yeah, they had the one stinker against Notre Dame, but that's just not that's kind of almost doesn't matter. Like that was a step up in talent.
It's true.
As we've discussed, they're not capable of drawing that same talent to Army. But if they were, this is the thing for younger viewers or listeners who weren't around to watch Nebraska in the 90s. This can work at the national championship level. Like a triple option offense can dominate the entire country. When I first got into college, I said this in a podcast a while ago. When I first got into college football, Nebraska was the best team in the country, and it wasn't even close. No one could even touch them, and they just ran the option right over everybody, and it didn't. They had national level talent. They were winning the national title, so you can still do this at the highest level if you've got the right program, the right coach, and you bring the right players in. I still want them to go back to that. I was just heartbroken when they switched to just a plain Jane offense.
Yeah. No, and if you wanted to go back even further, like the 40s and 50s, the best athletes in the U.S. would go to Army because that was at a time when they really needed them.
Yes, right.
And so they won national championships then. So that was,
they were the juggernaut back then.
Yes. Yeah.
I guess I was just saying, okay, so to that point, this was the dominant way. They were the dominant program. And then, but to project it forward, now the triple option seems like a gimmick in mid-level schools that can't win the national championship. But that wasn't true in the 90s. Nebraska was the best team in the country for a while. And I think they still have one of the best stretches of a 5 or 6 year run, a win-loss record. So you can, a triple option offense can still be a dominant national level team at a program that doesn't have Army's limitations. I really want it to happen. I want it to happen at Georgia Tech or somewhere. Well, I guess they still have limits. I want it to happen at Nebraska. I want that back.
Yeah, no, but you're right. But like a second best thing is seeing them crush the AAC and win their conference title. It's good for them.
Yep.
All right, third best thing I saw this weekend in the NCAA was the Oregon and Penn State's offense, both of them. So we were wrong on that one. We picked the under, which was gone by about halftime.
Yeah.
But you know what? That was great to watch. Like that was finally Penn State. That was the Penn State we thought we would get earlier in the season. Like it was both defenses I don't think played bad. It was just both offenses were on fire. And Penn State, when they run the ball, they can still get it out in space. They use the tight end a ton. Your wide receivers just have to do enough just to keep it sort of semi-honest. And when Aller has time to throw, like he looks way better. So that was that watching both their offenses succeed. The Oregon's offenses looks unstoppable. But seeing their both offenses work really well was great. Finally, Penn State's offense. So
did you hear the commentators talk about Tez Johnson? He was at Troy and no one gave him a look.
Yeah,
and he wanted to go to Oregon, and Bo Nix had it all sort of organized that one day he knew the phone call was coming.
Yeah.
This guy's awesome. This guy reminds me of Devontae. What am I trying to say? Smith, when he was on
Alabama.
When he was on Alabama, small guy, won the Hiesman. He looks just like that.
Slightly undersized, but runs an amazing route and is electric with the ball in the open field.
Oh my God. It's just, I can't believe people overlook this, but I guess you can't get them all. Like you can't catch them all out of high school.
People are wrong.
He looked like every time he touched the ball, he was like one missed tackle away from scoring a touchdown.
Yeah.
Every time in that game.
No,
and go ahead.
No, I'd hate to be the Penn State DB when you're chasing, he's sort of 5 yards ahead of you and the ball's coming and you're like, oh man, there's no one around to stop him.
There's so many options on that team. I mean, both running backs are good. They've got 3 receiving options, 2 tight end options. Gabriel can take off, and he smartly takes off when he should. You know what? And with the offense playing as well as it did, that stupid coordinator kept going back to plays that didn't work over and over again. And the announcer kept saying, you're 0 for 4 on these swing passes, and about 3 of them almost got picked off. What are you doing? And they just kept going back to it. Never worked once.
No, it was apparent at that point that they had schemed, the defense had schemed up, like, this is what you do for the screen pass. And after the second time where it's nowhere close to being successful, then it's like, you just got to put that play away. I don't understand.
Kept going back to it. And also he would run right into the teeth of like a stacked box. And the announcer too, he's like, what, they're presenting a 7 or 8 man box. Why are they running into this? And it got stuffed. And then they threw against a light box. It just, I kind of got the sense, not having any coaching experience or any inside knowledge, I almost got the sense the Oregon coordinator was calling whatever he wanted to call, no matter what was on the other side of the field. And he was just, we're just going to run to right. His first down, we're going to run even right into a stacked box. And the announcer was like, I don't know why they're doing this right now. Like, Penn State's got enough talent. At least if they stack the box, you're not going to get through it. Obviously, overall, Penn State had no answer for that offense. But I mean, you stack the box, you're more or less going to get them. And it happened. And those swing, it was so frustrating watching that when when the intermediate passes down the field, Penn State could not stop them at all, ever.
Yeah.
And
with those swing passes, it's one thing if the defense lines up, like that was in the Georgia Texas game, I think, where the defense lined up and there was, sort of 2 defenders, but there's 3 wide receivers out there.
Yeah.
And then you would call that because you're like, that's in a position to be successful. But like the defense never did that. And
once. So I think once Oregon had 4 in a stack and Penn State at 3, maybe once, but everything else they got blown up immediately.
Yeah. So
anyways,
but that was anyway. So both those offenses were great. It was great to watch.
And I guess my point was, even with that inexplicably bad, what I would call play calling, they still could score at will against them.
Yeah.
All right. So the second best thing I saw this weekend was Boise State's defense.
Ooh,
so they held them. This is I guess by scoring, this was the best defensive performance of the weekend by any team in any championship game. Held them to 7 points. Now,
no offense, Ohio and Marshall, but
sorry. Of these big games that we're covering, let me say it that way.
Yeah.
So last game, these 2 teams played. UNLV moved the ball but more effective. Well, they moved the ball effectively here too, but actually managed to put it in the end zone a few more times. And UNLV showed up good here. Like, Boise didn't run away with this one by any means. And they got out to a bigger lead, and then they just sat on it. And that was an impressive performance for the defense to just hold and hold and hold. UNLV got a lot of yards. It was more like a bend but don't break. And in the red zone, when it needed to, they locked down every time in the red zone. Maybe, again, this goes with my ongoing theme of coaches leaving points on the board. Unless he just really doesn't trust his field goal kicker, UNLV definitely left some points on the board in this game. I guess hindsight's 20/20. How would they know that Boise wasn't going to score again? But 7 point, you're never going to win with 7 point. You got to do better than that. So good for Boise State's defense. There was some pre-game analysis, people thinking UNLV was just going to go right up and down the field on them, and they got yards, but they couldn't put it in the end zone. So that was a gritty, like, this was a boa constrictor kind of win. And Jeanty had an amazing game too here. And just, you got to do better than 7 points. So good for Boise State's defense, because UNLV has a potent offense.
That's a great example of sticking with something even if it's not working, right? Like, so the screen pass, that was one of the things, like, it's not working, you just got to get rid of it. Where running up, like, between the tackles is not something you give up on, because that was a great example. Jeanty, they really held him in check for a long time, but like 10 runs in a row, he barely had anything, but all it takes is one, right?
One missed tackle,
and then in the first half, all of a sudden, it's a 75-yard run, So no, that was amazing. That to me was a really flowers to whoever the defensive coordinator is for Boise, because they really schemed up the proper way to contain UNLV. Like you said, they gave up some yards, but they were not at no point did it ever look like UNLV was really in a position to take off or to do anything dynamic on offense. So that was a really impressive defensive scheme and effort that they had there, and really excited to see them in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, it was all landing on Hajj Williams' shoulders, and he did his best, but it just they had him. They seem to have an answer for how athletic he really is. They seem to have answers for him. Whereas last game they played, he a lot of those things turned into scores or turned into bigger opportunities. This time they limited what he could do when he got loose and was doing a bit of off script stuff. He's awesome off script, and they contained all of that.
Yeah, well, that's a really good point too, because that was the defensive scheme and the effort that they put. I've never seen UNLV that frustrated. Like, did you see him? He was visibly frustrated on the sideline. He yelled at the offensive coordinator at one point, and I think that's a great example of just how well Boise was handling them, because he was and didn't understand why stuff wasn't working. That's why he looked so frustrated. So
well, when he gets loose, you can tell like he can make plays. So they limited it. So, all right, what do you got?
All right, second best thing I saw was the two really good endings of two really good games. So the ending of the Georgia-Texas game, the ending of the Clemson-SMU game, like that was incredible. So good.
Okay. Well,
so
we'll revisit these a different way too.
Yeah, that's perfect. So like it's the to be able to win in overtime, like when you hold the other team to a field goal and to win with a touchdown, is just a fantastic way to finish it. The fact that they ran it through the middle against Texas to get that touchdown at the end was incredible. And hats off to SMU. They really sort of, I don't want to say they gave it away. They played an amazing game, and they needed a touchdown with 2 minutes to go, and they handled that 2-minute offense perfect. Like, they had their timeouts. They didn't waste the timeouts during the game. That's exactly how you're supposed to use it. They even got down to within the 20-yard line, the 10-yard line, still had timeouts left, so they could run and pass. Both things were open. They're both out, you could run or pass, yet either option was open for you. And that was just incredible for them to tie it up at the end. And with 13 seconds, you're like, oh, that's it. We're, good on you, SMU. We're going to overtime. But then you get it's 3-part game, Barbin. You've always used to say that. So it's the longest run back Clemson's had all season, like for the kickoff. And then the only pass that kills you at that point is like a 20-yard dig route, which is exactly what the commentator called, and that's exactly what they did, just to give him a shot. But for that field goal, the ending was just unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, I have that in my worst ever.
Another category?
Oh, yeah. Anyway, so my number one best thing was the Oregon offense specifically. You could call it Penn State and Oregon. But in this case, I'll just add to our previous comments on it that at no point were they behind in this game. And no matter how close Penn State seemed to get, Oregon could just push the gap constantly. And at some point I was realizing they're just going to keep scoring, and this vaunted Penn State defense had absolutely no answer at all here. Yeah.
And what do you think is the best part of Oregon's offense?
I mean, I don't know. They could run, they could pass. Dylan Gabriel can do it. I don't think there's anything you can key on.
No, and that to me was the surprising part. Like, everything worked. Like, their running game is excellent. The blocking is excellent. That tight end looks freaky good. Like, I haven't seen him much this year, but he vaulted the guy in the first half, and the commentator was like, that's one of the fastest tight ends in the country. Like, I'd never even Sake or whatever his name was. And the wide receivers are amazing. So and Dylan Gabriel's a good decision maker. So I don't know. That's
Tez Johnson's freaky. Sadiq is freaky. Both running backs are good. Okay, so I guess one thing that seemed to jump off the screen compared to all other quarterbacks is the speed with which Dylan Gabriel gets rid of the ball on pressure. Yeah. It was two things he can do that it looked different when he was doing it compared to all the other quarterbacks this weekend. And there was a lot of good quarterback play this weekend. One, when pressure was coming, he got the ball out so fast, and his receivers accurate, and his receivers were smart, and they were looking. It's not like he was hitting them in the shoulder or the back of the helmet where they weren't looking. His receivers were smart enough to know, oh, I'm hot right now, and they caught it, and he hit them in the numbers every time, and it was so fast. The color commentator was mentioning how quick he's getting it out, and then also Gabriel hung in there to the point where he was getting hit for any of the routes he needed to come open, and would hit his guy right in the hands just as he was getting hit. So on both sides of it, he hung in there in the pocket long enough for the route he needed to come open, and he'd hit him in the hands. And when there was pressure, he got the ball out lightning fast, and it was on target every single time. And none of the other quarterbacks looked that sharp. Like that was it was, to me, it was visibly different. Like, this guy's playing at a different level. So to your question, the whole offense looks amazing, but that actually jumped right off that screen to me. Whereas everyone had, it seemed like there was a lot of great running back play this weekend. There was a lot of great players, but that he was a cut above every other quarterback for me.
It's not just a cut above. He was significantly better than Ewers or Beck, like in that game. Do you know what I mean? Like,
or Jennings or Club, anybody. Like, he just looked different than everybody this weekend.
Yeah, he was really, that was a really polished, like, right. No, that's a great call. And it's sorry, I had the name here. Want to make sure I get it right. Was the tight end, the Kenyon Sedick, who's a sophomore, 6'3", 245 from Idaho Falls, Idaho. So classic. I feel bad for those high school teams a couple of years ago. They're trying to stop that guy in Idaho. That would have been a nightmare. Okay. So number one best thing that I saw, this I thought was actually quite moving when Carson Beck got injured and Gunnar Stockton came in and played pretty well. I thought that was good. And I remember thinking, I'm like, that injury must be pretty bad. Like, because there's nothing, this is a really important game, and it must be really bad if he couldn't come in. And then at the end, when Stockton got knocked out and Beck had to come in just for the one snap, and you could see that he was literally not moving his arm, in his right arm, which is his throwing arm, but to be able to hand the ball off, they knew they were running the ball. And to hand the ball off and to get the touchdown to win in overtime, and for Carson Beck to be able to be on the field to hand the ball off, I just thought that was awesome. That was the best thing I saw all weekend.
All right. Shall we move on to worst evers?
Yes.
All right. Okay. Number 3 worst thing I saw was Texas's lack of discipline and penalties.
Yeah.
Texas had
penalties was my number 3 too.
Yeah. Texas had 11 penalties for 94 yards. This single-handedly kept UGA in the game throughout the first half. UGA was doing their disappearing act for the first half as usual.
Yes.
They just weren't really in the game. They couldn't run the ball. They just weren't. They were just doing what UGA does, right? Kind of just sleepwalk through a half. And Texas should have been up, 2, 3, like maybe at least a couple touchdowns here, at least more than whatever it was, 6-3 or whatever it ended with, tied. And instead, they just shot themselves in the foot constantly. And even worse, a lot of it was happening when they got to red zone, or as Saban was saying at halftime, high red zone. They were, closer to the 20-yard line.
An absolute killer.
And they just kept going backwards. They kept, and these were just mental errors. These are not hustle penalties. These are false starts and just stupid penalties that it just must drive Sark nuts. And they obviously fought their way back, but that clearly wasn't enough. This was just an ugly performance from a disciplined penalties. You got to play a clean game here. You can't have 9,500 yards and penalties and think you're going to win. The other team, to a man, is just as good as you. Yeah. And they had half as many penalties. You just can't do this. This is those hidden yards. And these are just drive killers. They take points off the board. And I'm not saying that the refs were doing anything wrong. Texas was just same refs for both teams. And Texas was just constantly shooting themselves in the foot.
No, and it's really like we thought going in that Texas was the better team. And especially since Georgia, has yet to put in a complete game this season. And it's only the penalties is the reason why Texas pretty much lost the game. Like, because the defense was great, and they were at least balanced enough on offense that they could, but it was, the penalties are just ridiculous. And that's the one thing that, when you're on offense and you don't know what the defense is going to do, or there's certain things you can't control. The one thing you can control is your own behavior. And so to lose that way is because that's really the only reason why I think it was as close as it was, or why they lost. So, that was my number 3 too. So just go to what's your number 2.
Okay. Let me get to my number 2, Oregon and Penn State defenses. So I know you had their offenses, but I'm going to follow up here with their defenses. Yeah. This was atrocious. These were both supposed to be good defenses. Specifically, Penn State is known, I guess, for their defense. and they just looked like they weren't even there. Oregon looked like they were just practicing, whatever, 7-on-7 or against air, whatever you want to call it. That was really bad. And same thing with Oregon. If you think you're a championship team, Penn State's not known for having a potent offense, and you were giving up yards all over them. I think Penn State actually outgained Oregon. Yeah. So this is really bad. And I don't think this bodes well for either of them moving forward. No other, well, maybe not no other, but Texas and UGA played how we thought that they would, like tight defensive performances. The D lines, I felt like more or less controlled that game for both teams the whole way. I mean, Georgia's D line always shows up, even in these sleepwalk games they do. Texas's D line was showing up pretty well too. But here, I mean, I don't know what to make of these defenses now. I don't know. That was, I mean, I guess I could. Okay, so on the charitable side for Penn State, you could say Oregon's the best offense in the country by a mile. So you could say that. On Oregon's side, it's less charitable to think, oh, well, Penn State was the second best offense. No, they weren't. Lots of people were the better teams could hold Penn State's offense back, and they just went right through Oregon like they weren't there. So that doesn't, I guess this is even worse of a statement maybe for Oregon. I don't know. It's bad for Penn. It's bad for Penn State too, because that was a shredding. But maybe really nobody else has the firepower Oregon really has. I don't know. It just was bad. It was bad on both sides. Neither of those look like a defense that can win the national championship. Let's say that. And
that was my point too. My thought as well. So like it's the good teams, like in college, like the top 10 teams, top 5 teams. Their defense is always good. It has to be like in the run defense specifically has to be good. So early in that game, like second play in, when the runs were going for 7 yards, 10 yards, I'm like, that's bad. Like if it's at that point, defense isn't tired yet. The other team wants to establish the run. And when you can't stop it, then I'm like, that's really, but for both of them, as soon as the runs are working, then the passes are going to be open because they're, because then they need to allocate the people to stop the running. So like it's specifically the run defense for Oregon was a concern, and Penn State, because there's, that was supposed to be one of their strengths, right? So, and they couldn't stop anything.
And a lack of adjustment in the first half. Oregon burned Penn State on the same touchdown pass twice.
Yeah.
And the player was just standing there by himself in the end zone. Like they had no clue. And then they did it again. And then on the other side, Oregon gave up, both running backs went for over 100 yards each. It was just brutal. You know what? If Tyler Warren could catch a ball, Penn State might have won this game. That I can't believe, of all people, he
had a couple of drops. Yeah.
A couple of big ones too. Just inexplicably, of all people, to actually have a sort of a half good, half bad game. I thought he might, to your point, you said maybe the only way Penn State wins this game is if he goes off.
Yeah.
Well, the running backs went off, but then he didn't pull his weight, at least in part.
Yeah, he had not a terrible game, but the drops were kidding. Which brings me to my number 2 worst thing that I saw this weekend is drop balls. So
I got some coal for that.
Yeah, so that was the Penn State, that a couple of those examples we talked about, Tyler Warren, like they feel so big, especially if you're like, it's a 3rd and long situation or something, and you run the play and they're open. And it works the way you want it to. Yeah. And it hits the guy in the hands and they drop it. That's a killer. And then the other drops that were really bad were SMU, right? So they had a great graphic near the end of that game where SMU has had 6 drops all season. Like they lead the country and like not dropping the ball
all day.
And they had 3 like in one half, like, which was horrendous. And it literally hitting the guy in the hands, and they were already turning to look to run, which is right out of the textbook of what you can't do. And so it's similar to those penalties with Texas. Like that's the one thing you can control. Like you can't control the quarterback has time or what the scheme, the defense was or something. But when the ball gets to you, the one thing you can control is catching it.
And it was happening. I'll add in Arian Smith. He is awful. Yep. I mean, Georgia. Oh my God. How it's more impressive they won when what seems to be your receiver number 1 has hands of stone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like good for him for converting on the fake punt, but I mean, I guess because that's not a far pass, it was just a little shovel. But any real pass, this guy's terrible.
Yeah.
And Georgia usually has a 1st round draft pick, at receiver. I mean, and a guy with sticky hands like Lad McConkey or Pickens, or for a while they had A.D. Mitchell. I'm sure I'm missing all kinds of great players, but they typically have an overwhelming talent somewhere out there. Maybe not 4 of them like the way Ohio State does, but they'll usually have one. And man, the one that they have right now, or Bowers. Oh my God, Bowers. So not a wide receiver, but maybe one of the best receivers I've ever seen in college. And now it's turning out that translates to the NFL. Holy smokes. And then this is the guy they have. I'm starting to think maybe Carson Beck has been working with just, he doesn't have Ferraris out there. He's got like Honda Civics.
Yeah.
Like they they can't catch.
I know they look like they should be amazing, but it's just not that their passing offense has not been good this year, like pretty consistently. So it's got to be a combination of stuff, but like the drops, like you said, I didn't have Georgia in my drop category, but they absolutely deserve to be in there. Yeah. And no, and I think that the other thing that's surprising about that is they have like the tight ends were good, like they were good recruits and stuff, and I don't know why they're good. No, but I mean, I don't know why you're not at least giving them more options. Like I don't know how many times they targeted the tight end in that game. Like
this is a Georgia. Fans would know better. They all have their criticisms of Bobo as a play caller.
Yeah.
Also, I heard one take that made sense. Maybe, I don't know, maybe you even said this. McConkey and Bowers may have been papering over some inefficiencies in this team over the last couple of years. Or I don't know how else to say it. When you have 2 players that good, and clearly in the NFL, you're realizing, these were overwhelmingly good talents on the field.
Yes. Yeah.
It just makes up for it. You can get away with stuff when you have generational players like that. And when 2 of them leave at once and the guy replacing them can't catch, you get what Georgia looks like.
Yeah.
I mean, they keep winning, but boy, it's their nail biters and no one's confident in them winning a game, no matter how they're playing. They just don't have that talent. And I'm sure Georgia fans, when they see the Oregon game, going, oh my God, can we have a little bit of that? Like just guys that can catch, guys that can make moves in the open field.
Yeah, no, Beck was 7 for 13 for 56 yards and a half. Like that's not good enough, right? So
some of it's Smith can't catch anything that came his way.
Yeah. Yeah, he's 5 catches for 41 yards, and it feels like that should have been
100-ish.
Yeah.
If he could catch at all. Man.
Yeah.
All right, is this we already got your second worst?
Yeah, so my number one worst thing was just
I got to go to my number one worst.
Oh, sorry, my bad. Go ahead.
All right. Come on, Dover. We're taking turns here.
No, I don't pay attention to you.
Yeah, apparently. Jeez. Okay, so my worst thing I saw was the final 16 seconds of the Clemson SMU game.
Oh.
I don't view this at all as Clemson doing anything right. I view it as SMU doing everything wrong, and also spoiling what should have been an amazing finish to the game for SMU.
The 2 minutes, the last 2 minutes were one of the best 2 minutes I've ever seen.
I was going to put that as my best ever.
Yeah.
And this just ruined it. A 41-yard kick return with 16 seconds. That's not good special teams. That's bad special teams. That's not good special teams on kick.
It's when that's the longest run back they had. That means it was a breakdown.
That was a breakdown. Yeah. I think any good kick return is a breakdown because it happens so infrequently.
Yeah.
That's the major outlier data point. It doesn't mean you finally blocked it up right. If everyone does their job on special teams, it kind of comes back to the 20, and that's
I mean, I guess like there with some except like Devin Hester was amazing, so like he was an incredible
Devin
return
Hester
guy.
Back there.
No, I know that, but like so like those
even then he doesn't get them all. He gets them rarely.
But if you give one up, that could be him like making a play or something, right? But this is when it's the longest one you had all season. That means that you don't have a Devin Hester. It means that with the new rules, they're trying to set it up where there's not all these violent collisions coming back, right? It's really bad. As soon as you give that up, then it's like, oh, we got a chance now with this pass play. Because if they just stuffed them like that, they wouldn't have even thought about trying to throw the ball.
So they give up a 41-yard kick return, then a 17-yard pass that did out, and then a 56-yard game winning. That is the worst 3 plays a team could possibly put together.
The only plays that would happen.
The only way they lose this game in regulation is that exact scenario, other than the kick return going all the way back, I guess. But and obviously Clemson had to be on the other side to do those 3 things. But to me, as I was watching it unfold, and I'm sure most fans would see that's a breakdown by SMU, not we finally solved the 41-yard kick return blocking scheme.
Mm-hmm.
and then you just so easily give up the 16 seconds. This is just, oh my God. And seeing the SMU players afterwards just look like what just happened. And I'm like, yeah, what just happened? You guys, this was one of the greatest comebacks in a championship game I've ever seen, because they came out, Clemson came out on fire, got the turnovers. It was 21 points in like 4 minutes.
We had the under in this one, which was actually the right side, because it after that initial, like the turnover and Clemson score or something like that, like it was both teams held each other. It tightened way down. So without that giant like 21-0 in the first quarter, like it went exactly how we thought. Which is a tight, well played game, defense and offense. And no, and the only other thing like that makes it worse, like again, I hear you about the 13, 16 seconds, the worst thing SMU could have done. It's a freshman kicker for Clemson who went 2 for 3. He missed one in that game before. And so to hit a 56-yarder, like like that's pretty impressive.
Oh,
so
that's
like
impressive. That's impressive on him. I guess to me it was, again, we're talking about entertainment value.
Yeah.
So the worst thing I saw was this epic comeback gets spoiled in 16 seconds. Yeah, I guess that true. To me, that's what I'm trying to say.
That's right. It's you took the best possible 2-minute ending and ruined it by those 3 consecutive plays.
Yeah, just threw it in the trash. And you know what? And if Clemson beat them in overtime, great. But this wasn't the ending.
No.
This isn't how the story should have ended on this game.
No.
All right. What's your worst?
So the worst thing I had was just some of our bets. We did a really good job, I think, betting this week. We had a winning record. But whatever possessed us to have the under in the Big 12 championship game, I don't know what we were thinking there. So that's what Arizona State, like that thing got squirrely fast, and hats off to Arizona State for, first time in the conference. And because I think they were, so I guess Oregon's the first time in the Big 10 too. So
Arizona State was
in Army. So it's like
12, right?
Yeah. So I had the people going like first time in the conference and winning their championship and stuff, like Army is really cool.
Yeah.
So, but that was I don't know what we were thinking on that one.
So wasn't Arizona State in the Pac-12 before this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So first time in the, but anyway.
All right. Well, I mean, I don't know what we were thinking there, but we didn't, I mean, I still think the under in the Oregon Penn State game made sense.
Yeah. Maybe. I mean, it did it. If we were smarter podcast people, like both Oregon and Penn State, I didn't realize this until the game started, but they both run the hurry up offense. And so that's going to get a lot of possessions, like either way, so that makes the and the fact that it was in turf, if I'd known both of them were going hurry up, I wouldn't have taken the under in that one. But for sure the SMU Clemson, I feel like we were the right side on that one, and same thing with the Texas Georgia. But yeah.
I guess I'm just used to small game James offense just not showing up in big games.
No, and you were right when you were talking about that. Like that's more of a concern for Oregon's defense, right? Like if Penn State did that to them, then
that's kind of what I was thinking it was going to happen.
If anyone else is going to play Oregon, I
put it this way: Penn State's defense is supposed to be good. I thought if somebody could put up some resistance to Oregon, I thought Penn State could do it. Clearly, they had no resistance at all.
Yeah.
And then Penn State's offense doesn't look like much of anything when they were up against anybody good. So I kind of viewed it kind of going a bit like I thought this game would look a little bit like Penn State, Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
Just sub in Oregon. Oregon's going to get the better of them. Penn State's not going to move the ball much. And that's that. That's what I thought would happen. I didn't think we're going to get a track meet where both defenses just didn't know where the game was.
Yeah.
So
before we get to Flowers and Cole, we have some breaking news.
Oh, hit me.
At the time of recording, they've just released the playoff bracket.
Oh, okay. And
so
this is final?
This is final. So
all right, would you
like to hear what the bracket is? Okay, so number 1, Oregon. Number 1 seed.
Obvious.
Number 2 seed, Georgia.
Yeah.
Number 3 seed, Boise. Number 4 seed, Arizona State.
I thought that might happen after how badly they beat them.
Because they really handled them. So that means number 5 is Texas, playing
which is not
Clemson,
a bad spot.
Who's number 12 in the first round.
That'll be a fun game.
Tennessee, Ohio State, 9-8. Another really good game. SMU, Penn State, 11 versus 6.
Oh,
so
they put SMU in. Good.
Yeah.
All right.
And then Indiana, Notre Dame.
All right. I'll take that field.
Yeah. So no Miami, no Bama.
I think I'm kind of satisfied with that. Miami blew it at the end of the season. And I think just Bama fatigue. People are sick of seeing Bama in.
Yeah, the only team like Indiana is good. I mean, I probably would have preferred like South Carolina or Miami or something like that for that one. I know,
over
but it's
Rourke.
Yeah, I know, but it's against Notre Dame. But like that'll be Indiana at Notre Dame. That's going to be pretty good.
And it's strength against strength right there.
Yeah, I know. So
that's going to be awesome.
Yeah, some good matchups there.
So where are those games played?
So I think it's Clemson at Texas because I think the first round is all at the home field, right?
Yeah, but
so
who's the higher seed? So Texas,
right?
Texas hosting Clemson.
Clemson at Texas, Tennessee at Ohio State, SMU at Penn State, and then Indiana at Notre Dame.
This is gonna be good.
Yeah,
it's gonna be good.
That's pretty solid.
Yeah, I'm glad SMU gets another crack at this thing.
Yeah. So Arizona State will play the winner of Clemson, Texas.
Okay.
Oregon's going to play the winner of Tennessee, Ohio State.
I don't want to see a rematch. I hope Tennessee wins that one.
Boise State plays the winner of SMU, Penn State.
I think they could handle either of them.
Yeah, and Georgia plays the winner of Indiana, Notre Dame.
Oh yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. This is going to be interesting. I'm kind of excited only because we're not going to get exactly all the same teams.
No,
so I mean, a lot of them are still in there, but I think I think there was just a distaste if Alabama got put in there over some of these teams who have better records. So, well, that's interesting. All right, well, that's cool.
All right,
well, obviously looking forward to that. So I got a bunch of coal here. Well, let's start with the coal so we can end on the positive. There's tons of flowers. There was some. One of my categories might have been big players showing up. And then it just turned into everybody. So now I'm just going to do it as flowers. Yeah. But Cole, Arizona State's the DB, Shamari Simmons, with the targeting hit. First of all, this is in the fourth quarter. The game's out of hand. You're going to win. And all you managed to do was get yourself kicked out of the first 2 quarters of the next playoff game. You got to... I know that the refs are being they're being just too strict in general. Like there's some terrible roughing the passer calls. Like you can't even hit the guy to the ground anymore. It's almost like you just got to wrap him up and stand there. But knowing that, it's not like you don't know they overprotect the quarterbacks. You absolutely know they're going to call you for anything that isn't the perfect hit at the perfect moment. If he's throwing and he's not a runner, you got to be smarter than this. And he just blasts him helmet to helmet. Like he goes cage to cage. This was so obvious.
Yeah.
Just put your helmet on his elbow. Put your helmet on the ball through his midsection. Yeah. Safe. You go face to face. That's going to get called every time. It doesn't matter if 20 years ago that was a clean hit. Now it isn't. And you know this. Like you know this. And you just take yourself out of what might be Arizona State's first only. It's such a rare thing to get. I mean, the 12-team playoffs is new, obviously. No one expected this. Your team got picked last for your conference. You win it. You're in the playoffs, and you're going to sit half the first playoff game. What a dumb move. And it's not like he didn't know. It was such a clean hit. He could have hit him anywhere he felt like it, and he just went right for his face.
Yeah. No, and that's terrible. And again, there was a really good. That's a good point. I think we mentioned it before, but it's just Arizona State. No one picked them to win this year, and for them to win, and it's a great deal, and that's just a horrible, horrible way to end a game with that guy.
It's not that I'm not displeased about the hit. I know but they're calling. You just took yourself out of half of. I'm sure he feels stupid that he's going to have to sit for half that game just because of a meaningless hit. This wasn't a hit that could have tipped the balance of this game. This game was over. Just.
One of the calls I had was for Ewers or the Texas passing offense, because watching the game live, it really felt like it wasn't going well. Now, at the end of the day, he had 358 yards passing, which was good, but like that, it did not feel like that watching the game. It looked like they had them bottled up the whole time. So 24 for 46 kind of makes more sense because he wasn't, but the 2 interceptions were bad. Yeah. Like especially I think it was the second one where he just threw it up the sideline and the Georgia player turned around and just caught it in his midsection. Like that was, just, you can't do that. Like you should, I don't know,
also,
better than that.
I had on Ewers' performance, there was moments in that game where a play broke down right away and he would just kind of throw it at a blitzing lineman.
Yeah.
Whereas a more mobile quarterback might have got his way out of there and made a couple of yards out of it. He seems to act like a 35-year-old Matt Ryan, where he acts like he's not mobile, plays over, just discard it. Where some of your more dynamic quarterbacks like Gabriel or Jennings, Klubnik, they would find their way to some positive yards. Like if you guys listen to the show, you know I'm all about the mobile quarterback. Put it this way, yours ain't good enough to just stand in the pocket. Like you can't just give away downs like that. If it's breaking down, get out of there. Mahomes gets out of there. He's the best quarterback on the planet right now. And when a play breaks down, he's just throw it at the defense. You try to make something out of it. Like this, that's your MVP, Lamar Jackson. I know he doesn't run at all like Jackson, but recognize when it's time to scramble and not just, he would even just sort of look away. Like there was a couple that were really pathetic. And I thought that's not winning football right there. Like, and I'm not saying take the guy head on, but he's coming, play's already dead. You obviously can't get it over him. And scramble, get a yard, anything, just anything other than look away and just throw it. He did it maybe 2 or 3 times. And I thought, okay, Arch might have had a better chance at getting a yard or 2 here. This is like a give up on the play before it needs to be given up is the way I kind of saw it. Anyways, so more coal in that game. The Texas coaches for not being prepared for the fake punt.
Oh, that one was that
Georgia lost their punter and their quarterback.
Yeah.
Do you think they're not desperate to keep the drive alive here? And after seeing the punter go out, I thought, oh, they're for sure going to fake this. It just seemed obvious.
Deep in their own end. Like it was on like their own 30-yard line.
Given the players that are out at that moment.
Yeah.
Why aren't you just playing punt safe?
Yeah.
Like what difference does it make? You're just going to fair catch the thing anyways. You're not
right.
Like you're not banking on a punt return to win this game. I guess is what I'm trying to say. Just leave one guy back there and play punt safe. And instead they run it around the corner. The 2 idiots covering the gunner had their back to him. It was just like so easy. I don't know. It just seemed to me you shouldn't get burned on like something like that in a game like this. Like that kept them in the game. Oh God, that was terrible. So you got any more coal?
No, you keep going.
All right. Well, we'll keep going. The Texas kicker for missing 2 field goals. The only reason this game even made it to overtime is because he missed those 2 field goals. Yeah. And then, I mean, the alternate view is he did get the kick that tied it, but man, those 2 kicks, they weren't that hard.
No.
Oh, and Texas, I think, took penalties on both of them that made them longer.
Yes, that's true.
Again, going back to Texas, worst ever,
penalties was
shooting themselves in the foot. But I mean, maybe on the first one, the 5 yards, the way it curled 5 yards closer, it might have gone in.
Right.
But man,
no, he had a bit of a hooking thing going on.
Yeah. So yeah, just all kinds of mistakes by Texas. Moving on to Flowers. Do you have any Flowers?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's so many. Like
just
you said,
start. I got tons. People. I'm sure we're covering all the same people.
Ashton Jeanty, amazing, 200 yards, have to do it. Good for him.
Cam Skattebo, 16 for 172 TDs, 38 yards receiving, another TD.
Yeah, Dylan Gabriel had 4 touchdown passes in the first half, I want to say.
So 2 for 32, 283, 4 TDs. Yeah. Okay, Klubnik.
Like no interceptions in the
interceptions.
And the sacks were like almost non-existent.
Klubnik had one of his best games, 24 for 41, 262, 4 TDs.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You keep going.
Bryson Daily.
Yeah.
25 rush, 126 yards, 4 TDs. I mean, this guy's a beast. Really good. Well, that's why they get the shirt.
Yeah, Tez Johnson, 181 yards, like you said. And
he was just going off.
And the most dynamic player on the field.
Yeah, totally. Both running backs for Penn State, both went over 100 yards, both got a touchdown.
Trevor Etienne, which is hard to say because he used to play for Florida and he's at Georgia now, but having the game-winning running touchdown up the middle.
Yeah, statistically, it wasn't super impressive, but it mattered. He got him when it mattered.
94 yards isn't terrible.
Isn't terrible, but I'm just saying some of these people were going off. I mean, Kevin Jennings, 31 for 50, 304 yards, 3 TDs, plus a running TD.
Yeah, that was
that was a great quarterback performance.
Yeah, they should have won, or at least tied it.
Staying with the quarterback, Sam Levitt. No one kind of was really talking about him nationally. 12 for 17, 3 TDs, 219 yards, and then a rushing TD. That's great.
It's amazing. It's extremely efficient, and that's all you need to do when you've got a guy running for 170 yards.
Yeah, I mean, this this was my list of, okay, so this was the list of flowers. I started off with big players showing up big, and the list was too big.
Yeah, no,
So
for sure.
it was just,
which is awesome to see, right? Like on championship weekend, you want the best players to stand up and have a great game, and that's what made it so good.
And most of this, save for, I don't know what you make of Levitt, and okay, so most of this was utterly necessary, even in the losing efforts. Like Katron Allen and Nick Singleton needed to do this to hang in there with Oregon for as long as they did. Kevin Jennings, I mean, again, that game should have gone to overtime. And he brought them back from what looked like a disaster in the first half. They needed everything out of Klubnik just to be in the end of that game, right?
Yep.
Gabriel needed to do this to keep ahead of Penn State because their defense wasn't showing up.
Yep.
Same with Jeanty. The way that game went, you needed 200 yards out of him.
There was a point
and play keep away.
Yeah, it never really felt like UNLV was in it, but they were like, once they scored their touchdown, they're like, oh, it's like just 2 scores. Like that's not nothing, So
yeah, and then the only one that was sort of Levitt and Skattebo, I mean, they just blew their doors off. It's not like you didn't need all of this performance, but it was an impressive one. That was the most dominant performance of the weekend, obviously. But all of these people showed up big time. All the biggest players on these teams basically showed up big time. Big time.
Yeah, so the playoffs now are going to be, so the first one's going to be Friday, December 20th. That's Indiana at Notre Dame at 8 p.m. Eastern. And then Saturday, there's going to be 3 of them on Saturday, December 21st. So it's SMU at Penn State, Clemson at Texas at 4, and then Tennessee, Ohio State at 8 p.m.
Yep.
So, man, those are good.
I mean, we're going to keep having weekly shows. We'll just, if there's not much football going on between now and then, we'll just cover the headlines.
Yeah, like for next week for our NCAA show, our Saturday show of our Saturday versus Sunday will probably be the Army Navy review, and then like the playoff preview show or something.
Yeah,
and
any headlines.
Yeah,
like, we're going to be covering, coaches moving, players moving,
and bowl games. The bowl games start on the 14th. Like there's already some that are already listed right now. So
but either way, every week we're going to, even when there's not many games, we're going to be covering just the headlines because we're still always going to be judging was Saturday, was college more entertaining than pro. This week I doubt pro could possibly keep up with this.
Goodness, no.
I don't know what's going to have to happen for that, but so with that note, I think we're going to leave this one here and come back for our NFL review tomorrow. We'll catch you later.